The reflection in the mirror. Introduction. The manipulation theory. The human brain is vulnerable to manipulation. In the dark, it can turn a coat into a ghost, dunes in the desert into an oasis, the howl of the wind into a whisper. But mirrors, a mirror is different. Science tells us that what we see when we look into a mirror is only the reflection of light. But have you ever wondered why, sometimes, when you stare at your own reflection, you shiver with the feeling that something in there does not belong to you? The mirror is one of the rare objects that has never lost its importance throughout human history. Undoubtedly, this is largely due to humanity's desire to know itself and make sense of its own existence. Even before mirrors became tangible objects, we know that humans watched their reflections in the surface of water and in polished stones. These first experiences frequently appear in myths, the most important narratives witnessing human life. The most famous of these is the myth of Narcissus. According to the myth, a seer says that Narcissus will live a long life only if he never looks at his own face. Punished by the gods for his actions, Narcissus cuts all ties with mirrors. One day, when he bends down to drink water by a stream, he encounters his reflection. Seeing his face for the first time, Narcissus becomes enchanted by his own beauty and falls in love with his image. He cannot leave the reflection in the water, stops eating and drinking, and withers away day by day. Eventually, he dies, and his body transforms into a narcissus flower. We also know that mirrors held sacred places in other mythologies. In Hittite belief, underworld goddesses were thought to weave the king's life with a needle in one hand and a large mirror in the other. The mirror was also one of the most important symbols of Amaterasu, one of the greatest goddesses in Japanese mythology, and of Aphrodite in Greek mythology.
But did Narcissus, Amaterasu, or Aphrodite have secrets about mirrors that never reached our time and were never shared with anyone? Yes, they did. They're reflections. And these reflections were not mere images. They were observers. Because mirrors do not only show, they observe and record everything. And they do not show you everything they see. They are dimensional gateways left behind for our reflections, waiting to replace us when the time is right. You, me, us, them. The one who looks into the mirror does not see themselves. They see the reflection that watches them. So, how do I know all this? Let me tell you. Are you ready to face the reflection on the other side of the dimensional gate? Act 1. The delay. My new house was a place with a past, and the scent of that past had seeped into its walls. Not dampness, not dust, the smell of an aged life and unfinished stories. The mirror in the bathroom, however, was more alive than the rest of the house, frameless, smooth, as if mounted not on the wall of the bathroom, but on the wall of reality itself. Everything was normal during the first week. Then the synchronization deviations began. I bent down while brushing my teeth, rinsed my mouth, and straightened up. At that moment, a ringing started in my ears. When I looked at the mirror after straightening, my reflection seemed to have straightened up after me. Half a second, maybe less, maybe just an instant. I was certain I noticed that mechanical delay in the upward motion of my head on the other side of the mirror. That millisecond delay my brain perceived had caused the ringing in my ears. What I experienced felt like a software glitch. I laughed to myself. Fatigue, I said. But the me in the mirror wasn't looking at me like someone carrying the exhaustion of the day. It looked like an enemy who had waited years to take revenge. Same me, same hands, same shoulders,
but something did not settle right inside me. There was an expression in its eyes that no one should ever see in their own reflection. Reckoning. I was very tired that evening. When I lay down in bed, I kept searching for the reason behind this meaningless, absurd event within myself. Throughout my life, I had seen myself in mirrors countless times. In a hotel, in a restaurant, in the restroom of a roadside facility, in puddles formed by rain on the street. Perhaps I expected the expression on my face to speak the same language as the state of my soul. With that expectation, I fell asleep.
Act 2. Social Nightmare and the First Messages. One weekend, I invited two close friends of mine, a married couple, Michelle and Harrison, to my home. We were celebrating my new place. Laughter, music, delicious food. Everything was so normal that I had almost forgotten the delay I experienced with the mirror. Michelle went into the bathroom to wash her hands. We heard her laughing inside. "This mirror is amazing," she shouted. Harrison and I walked over. Michelle was drying her hands in front of the mirror. What I noticed while looking through the bathroom door was very strange. Michelle was looking at her face in the mirror while drying her hands, but the eyes of the Michelle in the mirror were sharply fixed on me. There was an indescribable anger on the mirrored Michelle's face that did not exist on the real Michelle. It was as if my reflection from days ago had now taken Michelle's form and was blowing the intensity of its rage toward me even stronger. "Michelle, are you okay?" I asked. She turned to me, her face glowing with joy. "Yes, why do you ask? But if you ever decide to replace this mirror one day, please tell us first. This is the mirror that has made me look the most alive, the happiest, more beautiful than I've ever been." I looked at the mirror again. The reflection had returned to normal, but that furious expression I had just seen on Michelle's reflection was etched into my mind like a seal. Act 3. First Contact in the Shower. It was one of those cool days. I took a shower in the morning. Hot water had filled the bathroom with a thick layer of steam, making everything foggy. I must admit, after a cold and chilling night, a hot shower felt wonderful. When I stepped out and began drying myself with a towel, my eyes caught something. The mirror was completely fogged. I reached out with the edge of my towel to wipe it, and at that exact moment, I noticed something forming in the steam on the mirror. I froze. On the mirror's surface, droplets were slowly sliding downward, as if an invisible finger were writing something into the fog. The message gradually became clear. "It's very cold in here." My breath caught. There was no one in the bathroom but me. With a trembling hand, I frantically wiped away the fog and the writing. Gathering my courage, I looked at my reflection. There was an expression on my face that I had not made. A demonic, condescending, sadistic smile. As I stepped back in horror, that smile remained fixed in the mirror, its eyes still on me. Panicking, I rushed into the living room and collapsed onto a chair. The bathroom door was open, but the thoughts in my mind had already begun to shift from curiosity into the script of a horror film. Something I couldn't even define, a force, an entity, had started to dominate my emotions, and it was doing so with masterful precision. Would it come out to this side? What did it want from me? As someone experiencing it firsthand, I realized I needed to redefine the meaning of fear. The adult, rational, brave version of me was gone, replaced entirely by a helpless, desperate child. But I couldn't think like this in this house, in this state of mind.
I got dressed quickly and threw myself outside. Act 4. Voices and Witnesses. A few days passed quietly. I had already started avoiding the bathroom as much as possible. Since my home was small, there was a tiny sink I never used. It didn't have a mirror. I had decided to remove the mirror from the bathroom. I would either leave it beside the trash containers outside or give it to a junk dealer and get it far away from me. Maybe it was the sense of security and determination this plan created in my mind, but the old me had finally returned. One night, while sitting in the living room, I heard a sound from the bathroom. The loud splashing of running water. I thought I had left the faucet open. As I approached the door, I heard someone speaking inside. It was my voice. "Yes, Mom, everything's fine. The house is very nice," it said. The nightmare had begun again. I had last spoken to my mother on the phone 2 days ago, and I had used those exact sentences. The voice inside continued. "There's a reflection in the mirror. But don't worry, it's my reflection. I'm not afraid of it. In fact, I share my secrets with it. A reflection that listens to me, gives me advice, and takes away my feeling of loneliness. I was scared at first, yes. That's a very natural process. People are afraid of what they can't define. But now I know it. It's my twin, who wasn't born from you, but from my weaknesses." I couldn't believe my ears. It was like a malicious ghost had entered my mind, inviting me into a pit with magical words spoken in my own voice. I flung the door open. The faucet was closed. No one was inside. But the mirror, it was pulling my body toward it like a magnet. I couldn't resist. As if saying, "Whatever happens, happens." I stopped fighting the pull and approached it in small steps. When I reached out and touched it with the tips of my fingers, I felt a touch from behind the glass. This did not feel like my fingers touching the surface of a mirror. It was as if the glass had turned into the hand of a living being. There had to be a way to escape this unbearable situation. I ran into the living room. The first person who came to mind was Harrison. I called him and urgently asked him to come over. After a while, the doorbell rang. Harrison entered my apartment with concern on his face and asked what was going on. This time, I was uneasy. I wanted to show him something. "Come to the bathroom," I said. "Look carefully at the mirror."
Harrison laughed. "Dude, don't get obsessed with decoration," he said, and we stood side by side in front of the mirror. I was about to ask him if his reflection seemed delayed when Harrison's face turned pale as chalk. "What is that?" he whispered. Harrison's reflection had placed a hand on my shoulder inside the mirror, even though in reality we were standing next to each other without touching. The fingers of the reflection were gripping my shoulder. I could even see my sweater wrinkling under the mirrored Harrison's fingers. Harrison looked at me, then back at the mirror. The reflected hand was still on my shoulder. "Let's get out of here," he said. His voice was trembling. That was the moment I understood. It wasn't just me seeing it anymore. The mirror no longer felt the need to hide. It was so confident about its prey that it was saying to others, "See now, he's mine."
Final act. Time to switch places. I knew I should never come into contact with this mirror again. I would storm into the bathroom with the hammer in my hand, hit it with all my strength, shatter it into pieces, and finally be rid of it. I opened the door slightly and looked at it through a tiny gap. My reflection was in the mirror, but it wasn't looking at me from inside the glass. It had completed its preparations to come out and was standing there with its head bowed, waiting for my final move. "If you're ready, then so am I said silently, with anger. Yes, anger. Until this point, it was the first time I felt that emotion rise inside me. That anger was like the last drag of a cigarette, burning within me. I would look at the broken pieces of the mirror scattered on the ground and blow out the final smoke from my lungs. It seemed as if it had completed its final preparations to enter my life and take my place. Even though this state made me feel like it was always one step ahead of me, how long could a piece of glass withstand a steel hammer? And then,
I gathered my strength and rushed into the bathroom. Just as I raised my arm to bring the hammer down with all my force, a hand grabbed my right arm from behind, hard. In the mirror, I saw myself, and behind me, my reflection, tightly gripping my arm with one hand. My reflection was in this dimension now. One of us was clearly on the wrong side. I questioned my past life, the sins I had committed, the hearts I had broken, the injustices I had done even unintentionally, the regrets. Yet I had never done anything that would make my reflection so angry that it would switch dimensions and replace me. While these thoughts raced through my mind, my strength was gone. The hammer slipped from my fingers and fell to the floor. My reflection looked into my eyes through our shared image in the mirror, leaned toward my right ear, and began to speak. Do you remember? It was the summer right after you graduated from university. You had gone with your family to the vacation town you visited every year. Your cheerful moods at home, the excitement in the car, the happiness when you arrived at your summer house, my joyful reflection was everywhere your face appeared. You would look at me and comb your hair every morning before going down to the beach. While shaving, you'd blast loud music and dance, watching the rhythm of my reflection in the mirror. One noon, in the summer heat, you and your friends from the summer house decided to go swimming. He was with you. How could I not remember that painful day? I said inside my mind. The day I had imprisoned in my memory for years, buried deep in the mines of my mind to forget. Don't be afraid, you told your friend. I'm right here. But he wasn't as experienced as swimming as you were. His only mistake was trusting you and swimming far out into the sea. You swam out. The distance between you wasn't far. Suddenly, you saw him being pulled under. As he struggled, he swallowed water and sank. At one point you made a move. You grabbed his right arm, but his panic was throwing off your balance and it frightened you. You didn't call for help. You didn't shout to your other friends in the sea. You let go of your friend's arm and quickly started swimming toward the shore. At the hospital, you cried constantly in front of the information desk. You looked at your reflection in the glass of the consultation room across from you, at me. I wish I hadn't in there, you said. I wish I had never lived this. But while looking at your reflection in the glass, something passed through your mind. After all, the rip current was responsible. And if you had struggled more, you would have drowned too, right? You were going to erase all the regret of not fighting, your cowardice, your fear, and your abandonment, with those justifications in your mind. But there was something you forgot. I was always watching you. In the reflections on the waves in the water, in the mirror of the ambulance you rode to the hospital, and in the reflection on the tile floor when you covered your ears not to hear the screams of the family who received the terrible news. And at that moment, with your own hands, you gave me an opportunity. The time for change had finally come. What I needed from you was your loneliness. You were only afraid when you were alone. I searched for you for years, you who had fallen into loneliness
and tried to escape your fears. Finally, I found you, in this house. Your decision to leave your family and move into a house alone would be my salvation. The salvation of me, who is braver and more determined than you. As I drifted away, having lost all my strength, living my helpless regret inside the arms of my reflection, waves began to form on the surface of the mirror. Within those waves, a scene appeared. The face of my friend who had sunk into the deep waters years ago. He reached out, grabbed my arm, and quickly pulled me into the mirror. I was behind the mirror now, a dim, cold, timeless, spaceless environment. My reflection stood in front of me, looking at me with that same horrifying smile. It was me, and I was still it. But my consciousness was now beyond the dimensional gates, and the only door opening to the world I had lived in for years, the one I was familiar with, was this dark window standing before me. But on one condition: if my reflection's image appeared somewhere.
Closing. Now it's your turn. So now, let's get to the real question. If I'm behind the dimensional gate, then who wrote all this? Of course, my reflection. After all, it was me, and I was it. Now, please take a look around you. Which of the things you see are real, and which are reflections? In a few seconds, this story will end. And if you have one, think about the biggest regret of your life. Then stand in front of a mirror and look at your reflection. If you're still here, I'll be waiting in the comments.